Chicago. Oh, here we are recording. I went from Chicago to San Francisco and then San Francisco to Auckland. That's where I met up with Julia, and then went to Wellington from there on, because it's about 400 miles from Auckland to Wellington. So we're down at the south end of the North Island. So you can all look that up on phones and maps to see where we are. So then we got, hi Jill. We walked around on Wednesday afternoon, and it was really, really blustery. Like Julia had this dress on, which was way up around her earlobes at one point. So it was so windy, but that's pretty normal in Wellington. And we walked to where the beach is to see if we could figure out what the swimming scene was. And I'm like, I bet you this is where they go. And the next morning we showed up at like 8 o'clock, and there were people who were getting out of the water, and that was the swim group, and they're called the washing machines, rightfully so. So we started swimming with them on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And it's just a great group of people. Lots and lots of help for just insights. And, I'm sure that a lot of these people have become lifelong friends. So I even met, I know she's on the call, Mel Hope. She was from Australia, and she just happened to be visiting them. And when Julie and I were walking around on Friday afternoon, we saw her, we recognized her sitting, looking at the water, and we wound up going out to dinner, which was really fun. So, okay, so we'll fast forward. I wasn't worrying too much about the weather because I knew I couldn't do anything about it. And I was watching it a little bit, but I wasn't watching it a lot. My friend from Japan, Dina Levisick, she had her 27th birthday, no, 27th birthday on Tuesday. And we're hoping that would be the day. So we swam at the same time in Japan. And then so Phil Rush, who is the guy who puts this whole thing together, met with us on Sunday morning after swimming. And he told us what the whole schmoke things was. And he goes, the middle of the week looks pretty good, but he would not commit to anything. And I don't blame him. So we're just, remaining calm, making sure we got everything packed up, ready to go. And then he said, I will be in touch with you on Monday, and we'll take it from there. So Monday night around 7, he gave us the go that we were going to make, that this was the time to go. So we were, all ready to go. And we got up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we drove to the marina. And one of the people from the swim group came to our apartment and picked us up in tandem, and we drove our car. And then he drove over to Dina's apartment, and we all went up to this marina, which is pretty hard to find. It's about 40 minutes away, half an hour, 40 minutes away. And forget it if I would have ever found that by myself. So we went up there, and we started getting together around 4:30 at the marina. And Phil Rush, who was in charge of the whole thing, said, I wasn't really surprised about this, but he said, okay, Marcia, here's your crew, because I'm going with Dina. And I wasn't super surprised about that. And it worked out really, really well that way. Dina is faster than me, and that's totally fine. And the crew that we had was absolutely spectacular. Starting with Julia Green right here, the tech. So the way it worked was there's a Zodiac, which went right next to me. And I'm talking, it was within 10 feet of me the whole time. And then there was an escort boat that was tracking what the best water was. And that means by tides and currents, and just this water is just very, very unpredictable. So they were constantly circling around me, which was why my tracker looked like it was kind of bubbling, because the boat was on the tracker. The tracker was on the boat, the other way around. and that was fine. And then Lee Harko Road was on that boat. He's the other crew member that came with us from our, who came from the States. Then the crew that was from New Zealand was Corey, who wound up, he was in the Zodiac the whole time. They call them IRBs here. I'll use American terms. So it was a Zodiac, and he was so awesome in that Zodiac. I mean, he and Julia, just between his straight line and Julia feeding me and, you know, keeping up my spirits and everything like that, it was just really, really good team there. And then also on the boat was Donald, who was driving the boat, and then Brett, who was the official navigator / observer, because somebody has to keep notes for this. And by doing that, he made me look very disorganized, which was like amazing that he was just so on top of it. And Lee and Donald and Brett just got on like a house of fire. They were just, it was just a great crew. So we motored out of the harbor around 5 or so, I guess it was, maybe, yeah, about 5:30, about 5:30, because we put all this stuff on the boat. And sometime I'll tell you about the heart attack special we have, where my knapsack with all my bathing suits, caps, and goggles went onto Dina's boat for a few minutes. That was the heart attack special. But you know what? Pulled out another suit, pulled out another cap, but then we got it back for that's a major mystery we will never know. And I told Julia that that's probably, hopefully, the most stressful thing that happens all day, because it was a little stressful. So we motored out of the boat, we motored out, and I was just sitting under it was like a 35-foot cruising boat, and I was sitting underneath for however long it took us to get to the start. So we took about an hour and a half to get to the starting point. So the name of the marina was Manu, M-A-N-A Harbor, and that's on the west side of the island. And then we cruised down to a place called Oahu Point, O-A-H-U, because my job was to swim. So as we were motoring down there, the sun wasn't coming up, but it was starting to become dawn. And then they're like, okay, 10 minutes, and then we're going to be starting. So they greased me up, which was sunscreen, and then some Desitin, which is like baby diaper rash cream and like that. So I only got one pretty bad, that's a bite. Well, it's a suit rub. So that's my problem, but otherwise nothing else wasn't an issue. So what happens next is that I got in the Zodiac, which is just right behind the boat, and they took me about 100 yards closer to the land. And then with about 25 yards, I got out of the Zodiac, swam to a rock, showed them that I was touching a rock, and left, because it's common sense rules here. They are not doing it so that they can, it's really slippery and they don't want people to hurt themselves. So it was very common sense. So I touched the rock, and then it was time to go. And the sun was just coming up, and it was a really nice day. And Dina left about 30 seconds before I did. And it was just really joyful. I was grateful to be there. It was fun. I was having a good time. We were swimming along. And, I knew that the waves and the tides were going to be a major consideration, and it was okay. I was doing my job just to swim and swim and swim and swim. We left the tide as we left was about mid tide, which means it's about 3 hours after low tide and 3 hours after high tide. So about mid tide. And the reason they did that is so that would get pushed a little bit to the southeast. Yeah, a little bit to the southeast. And then when the high tide came up, I would get pushed to the northwest, which would push me towards the South Island. And that's very much what happened. And you can see the tracker that is somewhere online that has that arc to it. So a couple of weeks earlier, the swims had been very fast. But as I always like to say, my best time to swim is yesterday and tomorrow. So of course, I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And it turned out to be a very rough day and a little bit of a slower day than it had been in a couple of the tide before, but who cares? I had no expectations except just to make it. So I did think that I was getting a push at one point, but I was just more being pushed laterally. And as I was swimming along, I could feel just how strong the water was pushing me, but also because the main boat was keeping what's called the rum line, which means it's the going over the earth, the curve over the earth, which is why that's a nautical mile, which is a little longer. We were going in a fairly straight line, except for the tide. So it was a little bit fighting it that way. But I would rather do that than go the long cut. So they told me that the tide was changing. They said it's going to be flat water and then the tide is changing. But before that happened, I really didn't know what the condition of the water was until after. And Lee, because he was on the escort boat, he said it was massive swells. So it was like 3 to 5 foot seas, I guess. Bigger? It was bigger than that. Okay.
10 to 12 at least.
Okay.
No.
He's saying 10 to 12, but the fish is
Maybe.
getting bigger as we get closer to the
Maybe
dock.
not.
Yeah. All right. So we're not going to debate about that right now. Anyway, but it was it was big water. And there were times I could see the boat and then I would breathe again to the exact same side and then I couldn't see it. So I was falling up and down, but who cares? I just kept moving forward. And that was my job to do that. Let's see, there was not a lot of wind that day, but it was just the massive amount of water that Mother Nature was controlling. And she was having a lovely time messing with us a lot of times. What else? So the water was this beautiful dark teal. And then as the sun got higher, it became like a chalky teal. And then as the sun got lower in the sky, it became this beautiful teal again. So it was just beautiful. I saw some marine life in the beginning, and they have a lot of no-see-um jellyfish, which don't sting, but they're just like a nuisance. So it'd be sort of like walking into gnats, like, no-see-ums and like little bugs. It's not going to kill you, but it's just like, ugh. And they were more like for probably 3 miles off of both coasts. There was just a lot of no-see-um jellyfish. And then as we came closer to the other shore, they appeared again. But in the middle, there weren't a lot because I think it was deeper water there too. So probably within the first 2 hours, there was this big fish I saw going down underneath. And I think it was a barracuda, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to look at a fish chart to see what it was, but they're very territorial. And I think he was just nosy. And then I saw one other fish, and that was it as far as, drastic marine life. But
You swam with some dolphins.
but I swam with some dolphins and I didn't know it, which was really fun. I could hear them clicking underwater and I wasn't sure. And I wasn't going to like pick my head up to see, but everybody on the boat, both boats saw it. And that was really fun. So I'm glad that they were, that they were able to, and I could really hear them clicking underwater and talking, and they were probably wondering what was going on, but they really are just curious about a lot of things. But then when we were coming back, the dolphins, there was a pod that was probably 20 to 30 dolphins big. And they were surfing in our wake on our escort boat on the way back, which was really fun to see that. So, and as I knew I was making forward progress, but I really didn't know what the speed was. And I didn't want to know what the time was. I could just judge it by the feeds that I was taking in. And I ate after the first hour, and then I ate every 40 minutes after that. And my feeds were between like 30 seconds and a minute, and you have to keep them really quick. Like they told me ahead of time, keep them quick, and I did. So everything stayed down. It went down and stayed down, which is always a good thing. And Julia fed me very well. I had this liquid, like a liquid drink that has protein and carbs in it and rocks. And then I was also eating gels. So then, as we were getting closer, at one point, Corey said to me, and
Who's Corey?
Corey is the guy in the boat. He's in the Zodiac with Julia. And I could tell that the sun was getting like kind of high in the sky. He goes, we're almost halfway. So that was a little bit of a judge of time. And what I said back to him, I said, I thought 3 strokes from the end was halfway. So he got a laugh out of that. But because he's a firefighter, he was asking me a lot of little questions like that to test my mental ability. And that's really important to do that. And the water temperature was apparently 63 or 64 when we started, which wasn't a problem. And it dropped probably to about 57 at the end, which was exactly what I was told would happen. And by doing that, I wasn't cold, but when I stopped, I got cold. All right, so I was swimming along, and once I knew that we were well past halfway, because that was a couple of feeding wise, yeah, distance wise, Corey told me there was this bit of a kind of a crescent in the shoreline, like spanning 10 miles. And he goes, we want to get inside between those 2 rocks. Because if you get in a point like this, and then you're in it like that, if you get in between those 2 points, you're going to make it, but you got to get there. So I just hustled it up. And my stroke count had been, I think, about 60.
It got down to 57.
Oh, it got down to 57, Julia says. And then I just picked it up like Liz told me to. And that was the last 3 hours. And it was in like the low 60s at that point, which is, I'm trying as hard as I can. But I had been training at about like 125s, 130s for my hundreds. And that's about what I felt that I was holding at that point for the last 3 hours. And every time I would get stopped for a feed, I could feel I was just breathing heavy. So I was really working at capacity, but it was okay because we were making forward progress to get inside those 2 points. And then when I knew that we were inside the points, I just did feel relief, but I didn't let up. And the water, I could tell, was getting a little bit less deep because it was getting a little lighter. And the sun was starting to go down, and I was trying to get in before the sun went down behind the mountains. Didn't quite make it there, but that was okay. But one of the things I was gauging my progress is that Dina, when we had swum the Sagaru Channel in 2019, we happened to be there 2018, right? In Japan, right? 2019. She was 3 hours ahead of me, and that was a shorter swim. And this one, she only finished an hour ahead of, or 54 minutes ahead of me. So I thought she would have been on the South Island and back to the North Island and eating dinner before I was even halfway. I don't know what happened. Yeah, she got caught in a rip and just stayed there for 2 hours, and that was tough. So I will see her tomorrow and the next day, and we'll have a debrief a bit, but she's just really happy she made it too. So for then, as we got closer to shore and we were sort of in that crescent moon, that's when the no-see-ums really picked up in my suit. And they weren't a nuisance, but they were just like, it's like having jelly in your bathing suit. So I just kept going and going and going and going. And when I got, at one point, they said, you're 0.8 of a kilometer in, and then it was 500 meters. And I'll tell you, that was I was counting strokes to gauge how long. Okay, great. I can do 500 meters. No problem. That was the longest 500 meters. I mean, I counted about 10 500 meters in there. And I just kept going. And we were going for a beach that had been created by this little rock slide a couple of years ago. And Corey said that I was the second swimmer he's put onto that beach. But in Northern Ireland, when I swam that, there's only 2 beaches on the Scottish side, and I found one of them. So I'm just determined that if there's a beach, I'll find it.
The same in the South Island.
Yeah. So with the South Island, there's two beaches there. But I could tell that the water was pretty cold. And when I got up on land, I couldn't see the bottom because it was pretty murky right until you got to the shoreline. And I got out and I was just really emotional because it was just me and I made it. And I was just, oh my God, thank you, God, that I made it. I mean, I said prayers. I said, thank you. I just had to sit down and look out on the horizon for a little while. And I was just so grateful that everything worked out because these things are so variable. You just never know when it's going to work out. I never felt like I was going to quit. I never felt like I was going to stop, but just weird stuff happens and you got to go. I'm glad that all the training worked. And, I made it. And once I was done, I got back on the Zodiac. I was starting to really shiver and shake at that point. I was surprised that I was exhibiting like mild hypothermia there because I didn't feel particularly cold as we were swimming. And then the Zodiac took me out to the boat, which was about 100 yards offshore. And then they got me on the boat right away. I just ripped off my suit because I didn't want any of these jellies on my skin. And when I saw my suit the next day, they were like, it's like having like grape jelly all inside your bathing suit. It was really gross. So I'm glad I got it out. And then Lee and Julia were able to get me dressed. And the boat captain and the crew on the boat put me on top of where the engine was, because that's the warmest part of the boat. And I had t-shirts and my parka and a sweatshirt on, and I was wrapped up in blankets. And in about an hour, I was fine, but I really couldn't lift myself when they needed to help me. I mean, I needed help with all that stuff, but within an hour, I was fine. And because Corey's a firefighter, he was asking me a lot of questions the whole time to check my coherency. So the whole thing was just such a esprit de corps. And we just had such a great time with these guys. And I was just grateful. I mean, it's a beautiful stretch of water. It is unpredictable. It is really, really rough. Some days are great. Some days you really got to earn it. I always feel like my best days are tomorrow and yesterday, like I said. So, okay. So people are asking a couple of questions. So we'll put it on. If you have more questions, just put them in the chat and I'll try to get to them. Do I have more future swims? I always have more future swims, when I get back. So we'll see what the next ones are. I waited almost 5 years for this one because it's hard to get slots. So we'll see about the next ones. As far as calories per feed, let's see, it was probably about 300 calories a feed.
You were consuming about 4 to 5 ounces of the 8 ounces we thought you were going to consume.
Okay.
So
probably that's about what, 300 to 400 calories in ounces. I wasn't drinking enough and I need to work on that more.
But Corey, the firefighter, he was not worried because he's seen people cross the He's seen people cross the Cook Strait on just gels and no liquids. So if he wasn't worried, I wasn't worried.
Yeah, this is La Jefa.
Hi.
And then as far as recovery time goes, I had, like usual, you don't really sleep much after these things. I knew when we got back here, which was around 10:30, Julia and I started cleaning up a bit because you got to wash the salt off of everything. And then she was ordering me to the shower and, get your shower, Marcia, come on, let's go. So I did, and I probably got to bed around 11. Then my first wake up was at 12 and then 1 and then 2:30. And then I was up for good at 3:30 for the rest of the day. And then I took a 2-hour nap, like in the middle of the afternoon because I was tired. But it's just, you sleep like a baby. You're up every hour to pee and drink. So, and my GI tract after being in salt water for that long is usually off for about an hour, but Chris, I got my milkshake yesterday, so you'll be happy about that because we always have milkshakes after these. He's clapping. He's clapping for me. This is no different from, I'm no different from anybody, and anybody's ever done something like this, that it's going to be a rough day. You don't plan for anything. So we just had a quiet day on Wednesday, I guess it was. Julia slept quite a bit, which was very well deserved there. My recovery time, we haven't been swimming yet recently, because yesterday we went to Christchurch on the South Island, and oh my God, it was so great. That's another story. And then today we were going to go down to the beach, but it was just, woke up, it was 50-mile-an-hour winds. And I was just thinking, this is probably not one of the top 10 days to swim, but it might be the 11th or 12th. So we were actually told by the leader of the swimming group, like, stay in bed today. So we'll go down tomorrow in the next couple of days. Let's see, my recovery time. Okay, so the recovery time, I would say, I'm fine now. Like Wednesday, I was moving pretty slowly, but I'm fine now. And this morning we went on a walkabout, because Wellington is such a cool place. Like New Zealand in general is such a cool place. I love this place. And we have, but as far as swimming goes, I usually give it about a day per mile. So, I'll go back and I'll splash around and I'll have fun and I'll enjoy it, but I don't expect anything until like mid to the end of April. And that's totally fine, because I finally get to not have to work so hard for a little while. So my other swims, as far as recovery time, it's about the same, about usual, for all of them. So
she's definitely recovering quicker than she did for Hawaii.
From Hawaii. Okay. So some things I learned. Oh boy, what did I learn? It was rough out there. I was expecting it to be rough out there, but
when prepping for a big swim, don't put all your goggles in the same place.
Yeah, there you go. Don't put all your goggles in the same place. So, but I learned to, over this whole time, I've learned to enjoy the journey and not to have any expectations as far as time, because the most important thing is finishing. And I just kept going forward. I'm glad I'm the age that I am to be doing these, because I think I have more patience. I think I have some more wisdom. I'm not going to get all pissy at my crew most of the time, right? Julie was going to give me a yellow card if I got nasty, like they do in soccer, but I didn't get any yellow cards that time, which is pretty good. But I also learned, like, I had a feeling that we weren't going to go with Phil's crew. And I just learned to be flexible and to trust the crew that I had. And they were absolutely fantastic. And I'm so glad it worked out this way. So what is this? Things I learned for myself and for those that I coach. Well, for those that I coach, I do what I tell you to do. When Phil when he talked to us on Sunday, I said, oh, is there anything we should do? And he goes, do what I tell you to do. And that's always what you should be doing as a swimmer. And when we were ready to go on, what was it, Monday night, like, I handed my phone to Julia. She and Lee were going over this stuff and over this stuff and over this stuff. And I was out of the picture, and I went to bed and I lay down and I didn't touch my phone for 24 hours. It was really fun to hear Julia be the crew chief. And it was really fun to see her have that much experience and all. There she is. She is awesome. Yeah. Thanks. So let's see. There we are. There she is again. You can't do it without a really good crew. And that's what's so great. So, as far as, you got to do the program. There are no shortcuts here. And so, it's hard. Sometimes that's really hard, but you got to stick with it on the hard days. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, it also, yep, as Chris just said, just swim and finish. That's That's the
swim and
point.
finish, yep.
But it was really helpful for me, and I know for Lee, that we were blessed with a good crew to run the boat. Because
Yeah.
we can do all we want, but I can technically drive a boat, but I really should not. So we were just really blessed with the people that worked for Phil's organization, Corey, Donald, and Brett.
Yep. They were seasoned pros. Like Brett has a map that he took that I saw it a little bit. I didn't see it a lot on Tuesday night, but he was monitoring which way we should go based on the speed that I was going, what the compass directions were, modifying it constantly. And that was just really cool, like that somebody would take the care to do that. And eventually I'll be able to see that. I mean, eventually means like months, but it was just, they were so well seasoned with what they were doing. And Donald was really very careful in driving the boat and very safe. So I felt like I was in really good hands, and I felt that like I was always safe. And there have been swims that I've done that I haven't felt like that before. So somebody wanted to know why I was up all night. Well, I don't know if it's like a baby. You're getting your diapers changed and you're getting something to drink every hour. So it's just.
Mom went through a lot of Ricolas.
Yeah, I went through, my throat was sore from the salt water, and my GI tract was just up and down all the time. Like when I finished, for those of you who have spent a long time in salt water, just that amount of sodium going through your GI tract is not what Mother Nature intended. So it was, I sort of expected this, and I didn't panic that I was going to be just kind of miserable that night, but it was okay. But one thing that was good is that I took a really hot shower and I got all the sea stuff off of me. And I was just, I was as clean as I could be. And another thing that kept me up was having caffeine, because I hadn't had any caffeine since March 6th, and there were a lot of caffeine in the gel. Thanks for pointing that out, Chris. So the stingers. So I was just like I guess a GI mess at that point, but that was okay because I made it. And then what do we say? Though the size of the no-see-ums jellyfish, probably the size of a water bottle, but they were just zillions of them. Did I finish that page? Let's see. Just, it was, they were like this big. Some of them were this big. They're just a nuisance more than anything. All right. I think that's about everything on that page. So it's like, at least they weren't stinging, because I've had that too. And that makes the up all night even more miserable. So anybody have other questions and stuff? Or if you want to, can we take people off of mute, I guess, at this point?
So people can unmute themselves.
You can unmute yourself if you have questions. Oh, so did you take a break from swimming? Oh, so when the feeds happen, I'm not taking a break. I'm taking a feed. And yeah, I know. It's not really resting. I'm just feeding and then getting on with it again. And well, another thing I was doing when Corey in the Zodiac told me that we're not quite halfway, that's when I lost count of how many feeds we had, because I could kind of tell how much time it was. But I stopped looking forward at all. And I'm pretty good about not looking forward. But I went for probably about 5 or 6 feeds in a row, and that's 40 minutes without looking forward per feed. And it just helped me that when I would look forward at the very end of each feed, I would have made a little bit of progress, as opposed to looking forward all the time. I mean, if somebody told you to walk a straight mile and you looked forward every single step, you'd be like, oh, is it getting any closer? And I just didn't look forward, and I was trying to make as much progress as I could so that it made it just a little bit more forward motion with each feed. And I think that takes something to to discipline yourself to do that. So
also adding in with the feeds, when she stopped, it's not really a break, because as Mom mentioned earlier, the tides and the waves are going really strong. So every second that you stop is another bit that just pushes you further backwards.
Yeah, you get pushed back.
So that's part of the reason that it was recommended that the feeds are really quick,
Yeah.
which you feed pretty quickly to begin with.
Yeah. So, I'm sure I'll think about this more. Sure I have a lot of write up, it's like, but I mean, it was a really amazing experience. I love New Zealand. I'm glad we were able to be successful here. I'm glad we got the opportunity, because there's times when it doesn't work out for people. And that's frustrating when the weather doesn't cooperate, or a pandemic gets in the way, or something like that happens. Weird stuff happens. People have babies, stuff like that, and all of a sudden your swim gets cut off by reasons that were completely out of your control. But anybody have any more questions? If you don't, then we'll just, say goodbye for now, and we'll be back next week in the States. And so anybody have questions or anything?
And if something comes to mind after this, feel free to email Marcia and she'll email you back at some point.
Right. Okay.
Say congratulations. It's very
Oh.
exciting.
Thank you, Howard.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations, Marcia.
Great
Enjoy New
job.
Zealand.
Great job.
Thanks for everybody who
Wonderful.
helped. Thank you so much for everybody who
Enjoy the
helped.
rest of your trip.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's just fun to see you all. So it's really nice. I mean, I thought about you all while I was out there. Really appreciated the messages of support that Julia was relaying to me. And, it's just so much about the journey and being able to just push yourself in ways you didn't think you could push yourself before, and put a plan together and make it happen. So whether it's little or big, it's okay. So,
Good message.
yeah.
Very good.
Good message.
All
All
right.
right. Thanks again.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you
Enjoy
later.
your trip.
Bye.
Safe
Thank
travels.
you.
Bye, Marcia.
Bye, Julia. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.